All right, welcome back to episode 2 of the Anchor Leg Podcast. I'm your host, Griffin Gushman, joined by my co-hosts,
Jaden Wyatt,
Josh Hernandez,
Peter Mang.
And, we just want to say thank you so much for the outpouring of support after the first episode. We've gotten lots of people writing in, lots of great feedback, great comments on the YouTube channel. We could not be more thankful for all the support after our first episode. And we promise, we heard your suggestions, we heard your comments, and we're coming at you with some great content this week.
Yeah, we just want to say thank you to every single person that reached out to us. We were not expecting more than 5 people to watch the first podcast, so we're obviously very, very excited coming at you with a lot of energy this week. We heard your feedback. We're going to be including women's D3 results this week, as well as a couple other changes you'll see as we get into it.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it. We're picking up right where we left off this week, highlighting the best meets of the week. We've added a slightly new segment this week, adding in our Anchor Leg Meet of the Week, which for this week is the crosstown showdown between Washington University and St. Louis University. So let's jump right into it. On the men's side of things, we saw WashU come out on top in a very close meet with a score of 129-106. On the women's side, equally close contest, WashU prevailing 130-114. So starting right away with the women's meet, this was an absolute great meet. This is what we like to see, these crosstown rivalries where we've got two very, very good, solid programs in their conferences. St. Louis University looking to move up, make some noise in the Atlantic 10. WashU, of course, a contender every year in the UAA. This is just prime swimming content this week. On the women's side of things, Emily Leonard from St. Louis University, got to give her a big shout out. She dropped a 5:08 in the 500, 10:31 in the 1,000, and a 24:48 split on their relay, earning her the Performer of the Week at this week's Anchor Leg Meet of the Week. However, Washington University did come out on top, taking 8 events to SLU's 6 on the women's side. The top performer for the Billikens, like I said, was Emily Leonard. However, the Bears for Washington University got a great contribution from their freshman class. Freshman Peyton Watson took first place in the 50 free and 100 fly with her time of 57.19 in the 100 fly, the 8th fastest in Division III so far this year. Elizabeth Chen, also part of this star-studded freshman class for the Bears, won the 100 back with the 9th fastest time in Division III this year with a 58.54. She was the only swimmer to crack 59 seconds in the field. And, guys, I got to give a shout-out, obviously, to the WashU Bears, but this has to be a great feel for Emily Leonard, who posted a lifetime best of 4:52 in the 500, finaled in multiple events at the Atlantic 10 Conference Championships this year. Certainly somebody to look for in the mid-major D1 contribution this year. So shout out to her, shout out to the WashU women. Great meet on all sides. Moving on to the men's recap, we saw Alex McCormick take first in the 100 back, posting a 51.1, which is the 10th fastest time in Division III this year, a 154.22 in the 200 IM, the 4th fastest time in Division III this year, and contributing a 22.77 butterfly split on their winning 200 medley relay, showing a lot of versatility for Mr. McCormick this year, earning him the top men's performer of your Anchor Leg Meet of the Week. Ethan Fang for Washington University also posted a 47.49 in the 100 free and a 142.82 in the 200 free, the 6th fastest time in Division III this year. Both those men helped WashU complete the sweep of this meet, as the men took 8 events to SLU's 5 in their 129-106 point victory. Both of these swimmers, Fang and McCormick, were UAA standouts last year. Fang was an all-conference swimmer in the 200 free, placing top 8, while McCormick was the conference champion and national runner-up in the 200 back. I would look for him to contend to the national title this year, as he placed second to Division III record holder and recent Notre Dame transfer Tanner Fillion last year. So with his absence, we can certainly expect a multitude of swimmers trying to step up and win that 200 back title, certainly led by McCormick. We're looking forward to seeing these teams in action moving forward. I'm sure SLU will continue to do great things in the Atlantic 10. The number 8 WashU men and number 16 WashU women take on the number 3 UChicago men and number 5 UChicago women in a homestand in St. Louis next week at WashU. That'll just be an absolutely fantastic meet. Kickoff UAA action for both these teams. I certainly would pay very close attention to that matchup next week. I think this will sort of determine how the UAA is looking to shake out, especially on the men's side this year with a very, very close matchup between these two teams.
Yeah, those two teams last year finished 2-3 in the conference, so we can expect that to be a pretty close and competitive dual meet between those two men's teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and anytime you see a UAA matchup on a dual meet, you gotta look out.
For sure. All right. And we're going to move on to our next dual meet here, California Baptist versus Pomona-Pitzer and Caltech. So Peter's going to take it away for you with our next dual meet.
Yeah, no, this three-way dual meet, I mean, this is some serious competition we have right here. First off, the scores on the women's side, we have Pomona-Pitzer against Caltech is 227 to 41. CBU to Pomona-Pitzer is 146 to 135, very close right there. And CBO to Caltech is 223 to 49. First off, I gotta say this right now. Alexander Turvey on PP, boasting a 24.09.50 free, a 57.1300 fly, and a 25.47.50 fly split, as well as a 52.6200 free split in a relay. I mean, that is just some electric swimming right there. That's good for first in both her individual events, earning her the high point on the women's side. I mean, come on, this girl means business here, right? Unfortunately, they were still edged out by the CBU woman. Tanya Brooks over here, I know we try and stick to D3, but I gotta give her credit right here. 48.27 free, earning her first place. Second place in this meet, also from CBU, went a 52.72. You need to understand the absurdity of this. That 48 there automatically qualifies her for CSCAA down in Ocala, Florida this upcoming March. I mean, come on, man. That's an A cut right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great day when you can wake up, middle of October and say, I posted one of the fastest times in the country in the 100 free, especially, from a school like Cal Baptist. That's a mid-major school looking to really make some noise this year. And, it seems like, especially on the women's side, with swimmers like Tanya Brooks, they certainly have the roster power to make some noise this year.
Absolutely, and this is let's be very clear. This was not a slow meet, and she won the 100 freestyle by over 4 seconds. Absolutely incredible job.
Yeah, I mean, being able to say you went 48.27 in the 100 free at this point in the year is impressive. I mean, I know 3 of us can't say that. So
that's exactly off what you said, Josh. I mean, imagine her doing this right now in October. When she goes to Ocala, Florida. I went there this summer at Futures. Fantastic facility. That is a world-class facility right there. She goes there and competes. I mean, that's just gonna be jaw-dropping performances.
Right. I mean, absolutely looking to make a contribution in the CSCAA meet, which we see a lot of times. These underrepresented mid-major schools go there and make great noise on the national stage. But I honestly would look to her as a sleeper pick to make the NCAA Division I meet this year.
Oh man, yeah. On the flip side, though, let's go cover the men's on this side, which is equally as exciting. We have the scores. Let me break it down for you real quick. Pomona-Pitzer to Caltech, 203 to 73. CBU to Pomona-Pitzer is 169.5 to 111.5. Not nearly as close, but still very, very close considering this is a D3 to D1 matchup. CBU to Caltech is 222 to 56. Our high score, once again, coming from Pomona-Pitzer, a D3 school, Larry Yu. Let me just give you the quick versatility on this man right here. He swam a 440.33 500 free, earning first place at this meet, a 50.7100 back, a 152.462 IM, and a 45.7400 free split in the relay. Like, can we get a quick idea of this? I mean, a 5 free going a 440, I would never have expected him to drop a 45.700 free split. The same man. I mean, this is just ridiculous stuff.
And he threw a fast 100 back and a fast 200 IM into the same meet. I know he was tired Sunday morning.
Yeah, and let's really break it down here. I know Peter mentioned this earlier when we were, discussing some of the top swims of the week. Those last 3 events, we have the 500 free, diving, 200 IM, straight into the 4 free relay. So, I mean, let's break it down within about 40 minutes of each other. He threw down 3 of the fastest swims that we've seen in Division III this season. I mean, we knew from last year that Larry is a great 400 IMer, a finalist at NCAAs, but this is some serious depth across, very different events, in very quick succession. I mean, he's definitely looking to have a great season this year for Pomona-Pitzer.
Yeah, now talk about eating a tough lineup. I mean, if he can handle this, come a mid-season meet or end-of-season meet when he gets adequate rest, I don't even want to know what this man's going to be on.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
On the other side, though, we have CBU once again not letting this one slide. We have Tyler Manchin going a 45.16 in his 100 free, and then proceeding to lead off his really another 45.53. I mean, this is just consistency at its finest right here. I mean, to be able to go a 45 low and then do it again, that's also you can't knock that right there.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like CBU and PP really dueled this out in a close matchup on the men's side, and we saw a lot of fast swimming from both teams.
No, absolutely. This is a very, very exciting meet. PP definitely got to look out for him, but I mean, even though they were up against CBU, a Division I school, they did not let them go away easy. They gave them a true run for their money, so keep an eye out.
All right, on to our next meet. We got Carnegie Mellon versus Washington and Lee. So the Tartans traveled down to Lexington, Virginia to take on the Generals in a dual meet where both the Tartan men's and women's team came away with a victory. So a sweep across the board for Carnegie Mellon. On the women's side, Carnegie won 9 events to Washington and Lee's 5 with the final score of CMU 159 to Washington and Lee 103. So on the women's side, the story and top performer of this meet was just absolutely and unequivocally Savannah Zhu of Carnegie Mellon, who won all 3 of her individual events and contributed to a winning relay effort in the 200 medley relay. She swept the 100 and 200 backstroke, as well as winning the 200 IM, posting a time of 57:04, 2:04:47, and 2:07:34. Those swims were good for the second fastest time in D3, the 4th fastest time in D3, and the fastest 200 IM in D3 this year. Last year as a freshman, Zhu placed 6th at NCAAs in the 200 back, as well as 6th at the UAAs in the 2 back, and won the 204 IM at UAAs. So we can look for her to continue her tear through Division III this year, as she is off to an incredible start to the season. Some other notable swimmers were Bryn Martinson of Washington and Lee, who won the 50 free in a time of 24:26, which was good for the 7th fastest time in Division III, and Audrey Lambert of Carnegie Mellon, who won the 100 breast in a time of 1:06:77, which was good for the 8th best time in D3 this year. Guys, let's just talk about Savannah for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw firsthand last year. Let's just be honest, she put on a clinic last year in her home pool against Case Western. I mean, she'll be back in town this weekend, I'm sure, looking to follow up what was, certainly an excellent freshman season and building off of that. And, with another year of training under Matt, I know he does absolutely fantastic things at Carnegie Mellon. As this training continues to click for her, I would look to see even more, serious improvements this year and see her contending for more national titles.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny you said that. We'll get to the hot take section in a little bit. Josh, you want to keep going with this meet?
All right. On the men's side, the Tartans completed the sweep of the meet by taking home the win in 10 events to Washington and Lee's 4 events, with a final score of Carnegie Mellon 173 to Washington and Lee 89 on the men's side. Despite the team's loss, the standout performer on the men's side was undoubtedly Dalton Joby of Washington and Lee. Joby posted the winning times in both the 200 free and the 200 IM with a 1:41.94 and a 1:55.24 respectively. Good for the 3rd and 10th fastest times in Division III this year. And let's not forget, Joby also got 2nd place in the 5 free, posting the 15th fastest time in D3 with a 4:45.57, getting just out-touched by Carnegie Mellon's Cole Venters, who posted the 14th fastest time in D3 with a time of 4:44.63. The top performer for Carnegie at this meet was Christian Lanuza, who swept the 100 and 200 breaststroke with times of 56.13 and 2:05.52, both of which were good for the 4th fastest times in D3 this year. We also saw 2 more top 10 times in D3 posted in the 1,000 from Carnegie Mellon, and Miles Haraldson and Jacob Kwan, who went 1-2 with a 9:51.85 and 9:54.18 respectively. Back to Joby. He was a massive contributor for Washington and Lee last year, and he's looking like he's going to continue to dominate in the mid-distance free and IM in the ODAC, and we can expect him to contend and defend his conference titles from last year. And across the board, the Tartans look sharp. I mean, they're coming out of the gate hot this first dual meet, and we can expect them to take a big step up in the very top-heavy UAA conference this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And circling back to Joby, I mean, this is a guy who we saw him go out there and really just dominate the ODAC last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's worth noting that 200 free is just not even one of the events that he swims on his conference calendar. He just threw in a 138 on their relay last year just because. And, he went out there, absolutely dominated the 4IM and ODACs. And he did something that we don't see a lot of Division III swimmers do, especially ones that are right around the cut line, and that's he went to NCAAs and dropped a ton of time.
Oh, yeah.
And, finaled in the 400 IM in the B final, earning himself an honorable mention All-American. And that just tells me that he's on an incredible trajectory, dropping time from conference to NCAAs last year, coming out of the gate this year and posting one of the top times in the 200 free, something that's, let's just be honest, not even really something that's on his radar this year as a primary event. So I would look very, very closely at him as we head into mid-season and then towards the end of the season in the 400 IM.
I was about to say, because that 142 mark and that 200 free is what you're really going to look for during these dual meets right here, because that's what really puts you in an elite level in this event.
Yeah, absolutely, and really exciting to see what the Tartans are doing at this point in the season, and they're going to be here next weekend, so that's going to be a great showdown.
Absolutely, Christian Lanuza, I know he's going to throw down here at our meet. The energy at Carnegie versus Case is definitely some of the highest I've ever seen. I mean,
we're all very excited.
Yeah, it's going to be some intense racing.
It's going to be some intense racing. Hopefully, we don't get put down like we did in previous years.
Very true.
All right, so the anchor leg does have a D3 focus, but when an elite D3 team swims against a D1 team, we got to cover it here. That's exactly what happened this last weekend. Cincinnati traveled up to Kenyon, and I'll tell you what, Cincinnati beat Kenyon, but Kenyon showed why they're an elite D3 team, and they put on a lot of impressive races against the Cincinnati men and women. Let's talk about the women's side of things first. The Cincinnati women beat Kenyon pretty formidably, 179-65, but there were a ton of fascinating races. The absolute most electric race of the meet had to have been the women's two-breast, though. I mean, did you guys see this? Jolene Cree of Cincinnati won with a 2:17.9. Gabby Wee right behind her with a 2:18.3 from Kenyon. I mean, that had to have just been a crazy race to watch.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sure it was, and let's not let this get lost. Jolie from Cincinnati, she went ahead and qualified for the Division I NCAA meet in the 100 breaststroke last year. Obviously, she's more of a sprinter, but anybody knows, if you're an elite 100 breaststroker, you've got some speed to carry you up to the 200. And the fact that Gabby Wee of Kenyon was so close to her, really tells you exactly what we're going to expect from her this year. If if a D3 swimmer this early in the year is going toe-to-toe with a Division I NCAA qualifier, we can expect amazing things from her come this March.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, the Cincinnati women did win every event, but Kenyon was able to snag 7 second-place finishes and 6 bronzes. Overall, very strong showing for the Kenyon women. They showed that they know how to race, and no one raced better than Gwen Eisenbeiss. I mean, 24.04 and 24.05 in her 250 freestyle splits. I mean, let's talk about consistency and give some credit when credit is due.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gwen is another Michigan-born and raised swimmer. She swam for the South Central swim team. Absolutely elite recruit pickup last year for Kenyon. She had a great freshman year, and clearly is building off of it here with some elite low 24-second swims early in the season in the 50 free. We look on the women's side to see those 23-second swims as sort of the benchmark for an elite Division III sprinter, and she's already closing in on that in October. So I mean, I certainly think we can expect amazing things from her for the Owls this year.
Absolutely. I'm sure she was a little bit frustrated when she looked up and saw 24.0 twice, but I'll tell you what, absolutely amazing swims.
I mean, just like, even if it's not a time that she really wanted, the consistency alone is just something to really just admire right there.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the men's side. The Cincinnati men beat Kenyon 183-54, but Kenyon did pick up a win in the 200 medley relay. I mean, 131.85 was absolutely crazy for those boys.
Yeah.
They've got to be feeling good about the rest of the season and as they approach D3 NCAAs. Also some strong swims. I mean, let's talk about the Cincinnati boys. 1-2 in the 1,000 freestyle, 9:30.1 and 9:32. Can you imagine? I mean, I'm sure they do this every day in practice, but they were absolutely hauling.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously these are two great training partners, Gonzalez and Gal. Ido Gal, a guy that goes all the way up to the 5K, top 8 finisher at the CACA Open Water Championships last year. We know he's got the endurance. The Cincinnati boys obviously had a great go of it in the 1,000. I think that distance group is, something to behold. And as they make the move to the Big 12 in the coming years, on the Power 5 stage, I think these boys will face some staunch competition and will certainly be looking to push themselves towards that 9-minute mark.
Yeah, no, 9:30 is just simply no joke, especially like a dual meet. Like last time I even came close to sniffing those times was just at an end of season meet, and that nearly killed me. I mean, this is just ridiculous stuff right here.
Absolutely. And we talk about this future move to the Big 12. Kenyon's got to be feeling very, very happy with themselves that they were able to snag that 2 medley. And they snagged 4 silvers and 4 bronzes. They performed so well against a D1 team. And let's be honest, they got to have Emory and Johns Hopkins a little worried at this point in the season.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cincinnati's also just no pushover, too. This is like an up there D1 school. I mean, this is not just like your you're drawing a lottery slot and just going up to a random D1 school as a meet. This is some serious competition they've went up against.
Absolutely. It's always exciting to watch an elite D3 swim take on this strong D1 competition. It's even more exciting when it's a local matchup. Kenyon proved their ability that they can get out and they can race strong competition. It doesn't matter who it is, and the future looks very, very bright for the Owls. We've covered D3 and some D1 results, sprinkled in there. Let's take a look at what happened across the swimming world in general last week.
All right, so jumping right in here to the final stop of the FINA World Cup in Budapest, Hungary. Not to sit here and pat myself on the back, but our avid listeners last week who were paying close attention may or may not have noticed that I said, let's look out for Kaylee McEwen looking to break those world records in the 1500 back next week at the final stop of the FINA World Cup. And lo and behold, 26.86 and 57.33. Not to say I called it, but shout out Kaylee McEwen. If I could bet on sports and swimming was available, that would have made me some serious money.
He said, not to brag, but let's give him a second to brag. Okay, he totally called that. And if you didn't catch it, just go ahead and go watch last week's again. It'll be worth your time.
Absolutely. And we saw Sarah Sjöström complete her triple crown in both the 50 fly and 50 free, winning at every single stop of the World Cup in both of those events. And Chin Hai-yang completing the triple crown, winning the 50, 100, and 200 breast at every single stop of the World Cup. I mean, fellas, let's just say it. Chin Hai-yang is the most dominant swimmer in the world right now across a multitude of disciplines. We see Leon Marchand get out there and toy around with the big boys in the 200 and 400 IM, occasionally the 200 fly. Say what you want about Marchand. Hai-yang is one of the most dominant swimmers we've seen in the sport in a long time. I can't name a single person who could beat him other than Adam Peaty in his prime, who's certainly clawing his way back there, dropping another 10th off his 50 breaststroke from last week. We see you, Adam. But boy, oh boy, he's got a long way to go if he thinks that he can mess around with the king, Chin Hai-yang, in the 150 breast.
Yeah, I mean, going into the Olympics next year, Hai-yang has got to be feeling good about himself. I mean, this guy has all the momentum going his way in the breaststrokes. I mean, it's going to be tough for Petey to overcome that.
Yeah, no, there's a top seed for this coming Olympics. I mean, he's got to be sitting on it pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
I would listen. I'm not going to be there in the breaststroke. You guys have seen my breaststroke, but if I were, I'd be up on those blocks with my tail between my legs, having to swim next to him. It's a force to be reckoned with.
For sure. And, shout out Michael Andrew, who just continues to see his modified training approach pay great dividends. It looks phenomenal across all four strokes right now. We see it mainly in the 50s at these World Cup events. It's a quick turnaround having to swim so many events. But he's getting out there winning himself some prize money. You got to be feeling pretty good about yourself, making most people's yearly salary and a few swim meets. I mean, let's just be honest. Great swimming from Michael Andrew. Great wins. I'm sure him and his dad, Peter, are, absolutely thrilled with their results right now. As we look to see him, sort of round into shape after some harder training blocks, I think his hundreds of stroke and 200 IM certainly have to be looking good as we look towards the Olympic Games next summer. And, I'm going to toss the ball over to Josh here, who's more of an East Coast staple than the rest of us. We saw an absolutely incredible swimming event happen this weekend as 5 of the top 20 recruits coming into University of Virginia in one day. Josh, what just happened?
Yeah, I'm just going to say my phone was blowing up. My boys back home in my group chat, they were blowing up my phone after that announcement came out from UVA. I mean, these are guys that, I have friends, class of 2025, DMV area. We know those guys personally, and like NCSAs, we run into these people all the time, and it's just insane to see what UVA is doing right now. And the way they went about announcing this, building up the hype on their social media it's doing great things for the sport, and I am very excited to see what UVA can do when that freshman class comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jaden and I were sitting there checking our Twitter feeds, and we saw Braden Keith say, I saw Biggs coming to the East Coast and swimming, watch this space. And we said, now what could that possibly be? He said, maybe Thomas Heilman's going to Virginia, maybe he's joining his brother, and then somebody tweeted at Braden Keith and said, is Thomas Heilman going to Virginia? He said, it's much bigger than that. And Jaden and I said, well, maybe we're going to see a big head coaching hire, or maybe we're going to see, a big transfer to see, these boys coordinate such a big commitment effort in one day. I mean, clearly they're looking to take the men's swimming on UVA to the next level, be out there with the women and that dominant force in the ACC, and hopefully on the NCAA landscape as a whole. I mean, this has to be the most dynamic recruiting class we've ever seen. What do you think?
I'll be the first to admit it. I saw Braden Keith's tweet last week, and I said, I'm calling his bluff. Maybe he's got a little piece
Yeah,
of news,
yeah.
a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Absolutely.
I don't know. And oh my goodness, did he have a little bit of surprise in store. But that's just super cool. I mean, we talk about seeing something become more mainstream, more exciting. That's the exact thing that we're looking to see with that mutual commitment there. It was great to see for the sport. It's
Yeah.
going to be super exciting
And
going
I mean,
forward.
props to UVA because what they've done this year with their dual meet, bringing in the new the format with all the excitement, trying to bring fans to the dual meets, and now with this, I mean, they're just doing. I think they're just doing a great job innovating the sport. I mean, they're bringing new fans to that actually people that want to come watch these meets. People want to care about swimming news. Like, it's just incredible to see that this is the direction the sport's going.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of incredible dual meets, incredible hype, let's go ahead and talk about our non-Division III meet of the week, which is a face-off between the Arizona State Sun Devils and the North Carolina State University Wolfpack. So, starting off with the women's side, NC State obviously took the meet, great ACC force, consistent threat to get top 5 at NCAAs. But Arizona State women, who are sort of on the come up under Bob Bowman, we always often think of the men, we think of Leon Marchand, we think of Hubert Koch. How often do we talk about the Sun Devil women who really held their own in a final score of 170 to 131 against the NC State women who are a staple at the top of the NCAA? It's worth noting every single person from both teams suited up from this meet. There were some great swims on both sides. Catherine Burkhoff dropping an A cut in the 100 back this early in the season. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. Lindsay Looney of Arizona State, who's a great long course 200 fly, making significant strides in the short course pool, posting an NCAA B cut with a 155.27. Certainly somebody who we can expect to go and look for titles this year in the 200 fly in yards. But speaking of the 200 fly in yards, Reagan Smith decided, I'm going to swim my own little event here in the 2 fly in the pro group. We saw Caleb Dressel last year having some fun with a negative split 200 free, or last week, excuse me. But did anybody expect Reagan Smith to come out here and smash the U.S. Open American record in the 200 fly with a time of 148.33? I mean, how many guys in America could say, yeah, I can go a 148.3 in the 200 fly, not rested in October, let alone Reagan Smith absolutely shattering the previous record by over a second. What do we think of that swim, boys? I mean, that is an early contender for most impressive swim of the year.
That's, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Every time she dives in the water, you know that it's going to be something absolutely ridiculous fast. But, come on, 148, are we kidding?
If you told me that was a freestyle split, I wouldn't even bat an eye.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And we saw something similar from Reagan, who posted a 203 in the 2 fly long course, becoming one of the fastest performers of all time at the Sun Devil Invite earlier this summer. Couldn't back up the success under a very heavy program at Worlds, but I think it's great that Bob is getting the reps in early in the season, getting her ready for this 2 fly. Obviously, the short course and long course race are a slightly different animal, but we know that the Arizona State coaching staff, we know that Bob Bowman, they know exactly what they're doing, and they're going to have her ready for a grueling program next year at the Olympics. Expect her to challenge Kaylee McEwen, expect her to post a great swim in the 200 fly. I'm so excited about what we're seeing from Reagan Smith out there in Arizona.
Yeah, and just another note on this. I mean, the fact that we've seen now, last week we talked about Caleb Dressel, and now we're talking about Reagan Smith. The fact that we're seeing these professional swimmers come in and swim these exhibitions at these dual meets. Kyle Sockwell says it all the time. I'm going to declare it here. Professionals need to swim short course yards. It's so exciting. The U.S. Open, I believe next year is supposed to be formatted
It
yards.
is in yards next year.
It'll be very exciting to see the professionals that take that on. If we can get people internationally to come swim yards that don't normally swim yards, I think that would be crazy. It's just something that we need to see more of.
Absolutely. I remember one of my first swims that I really paid attention to when I was getting into, international swimming, U.S. elite level pro swimming was, I believe it was either the 2013 or 2014 U.S. Open was held in the short course yards format. And we saw Nathan Adrian race a 200 free. At the time, I was mind boggled as a kid growing up, seeing this guy, oh yeah, he won a couple golds at the London Olympics. He's a sprinter, whatever. The versatility that these pros have, that they can show up to, meets in the middle of the winter and drop absolutely flaming fast short course yards times. Reagan Smith and Caleb Dressel are doing the same thing here in October. I mean, it's just so exciting for the sport. And, for the casual fan to see these elite times this early in the season, I mean, it's just got to be so exciting.
Yeah, no, I just feel like when it's in a short course yards format, it's really easy to when you're seeing some long course, really to say like detach yourself from what you're swimming and what these guys are pulling off. When they move to the short course yards format, you really just got to hit them with one of these
unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I was just standing there absolutely mind-boggled by the results that we saw this weekend. And, taking a look at the men's side, Kasper Stokowski, something must have been in the water for the North Carolina State University Wolfpack in the 100 back. On the men's side, also picking up his A-cut, joining Catherine Burkhoff, his teammate on the women's side, in that endeavor, which very impressive in October. Automatically qualified for the NCAA championships. Both of those swimmers were competing for individual titles in that event last year. Obviously, we could expect great things from them. Leon Marchand just continuing to be Leon Marchand, posting absolutely fantastic swims in the yards pool. 52-1 in the 100 breast, which, let's just be honest, he was loafing it. We've seen this guy take out his 200 breast in 50.6. 52-1, he just came out there and was out for a nice Sunday stroll, and then came back in the 500 posting a 4:14, top time in the country, elite swimming for Mr. Marchand. Ilya Karoun, the dynamic freshman from Arizona State, just continues to be a force to be reckoned with in the yards pool. Didn't quite beat his best times this year in his individual events, but dropped a 19:55 fly split on Arizona State's first place medley relay. And shout out Cam Peel, the Michigan transfer. Swam against him myself at a Division III state meet. This guy is no joke, coming in here and getting immediately affected by the Bob Bowman training, going 18-7, God bless you, Peter,
Thank you,
on a 200 medley relay this early in the season. That is just absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and look, we didn't talk about it, but hey, it's swimming news. We talked about Kyle Sockwell's opinion on the pros. We talked about what UVA is doing. Let's give a shout out to our boy over here. As many of you astute Anchor Leg listeners may have seen on Twitter this week, there was some buzz on Kyle Sockwell's Twitter about some swim meets happening in unique locations. I'm going to give a shout out to this guy. Go ahead and talk about that for just a couple seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw Mr. Sockwell post on Twitter, the Arizona State meets are always so packed, so crowded. They have a capacity of almost 2,000 people. People are really into swimming out there out west. What would it look like, if we could get similar fan engagement as, the University of Iowa women's basketball team, the University of Nebraska women's volleyball team, throw a swim pool in the middle of the stadium and see who shows up. And I said, you know what, Kyle? I bet you AI could do a pretty good job of imagining this. He loved the idea, picked it up, reposted on his platforms. I got DMs from the coaches at several elite Division I universities looking for me to make designs for them. And you know what? Obviously, I can't take too much credit. It was my idea, but AI brought it to life. But this is just such an exciting way to get this idea floated out there. Talk about engagement in the sport. What are you guys doing if you pull up, let's just say, to the big house in Michigan, and there's a Mirtha pool in the middle of it, and people are out there swimming? What in the world? That would just be a sight to behold for swimming on the college stage.
Hey,
Absolutely.
I mean, we talk about how unbelievable this would be, but you know what the first step to unbelievable things happening? Someone articulating it. So shout out to Kyle Sockwell, always doing these things within the swimming community and getting the word out about how we need to make our sport more exciting. We appreciate all that you do.
Absolutely.
And while we're at talking about some exciting things happening, let's get into some Anchor Leg hot takes.
Yeah, absolutely. We're introducing a new segment this week. The listeners wrote in and they said, wow, great in-depth recap, guys, but what are your opinions on the swimming that you're seeing? We tried to sprinkle in a few opinions this week into our recaps, into our discussion of swimming on the world stage. And I'm going to come at you with some hot takes of our own this week. So first of all, let's start off with Crow Thorson. Okay, I brought up his name several times in this podcast, posting great swims this early in the season. But, I'm sure he came off of last season thinking, wow, I had a great year. I continued to improve my short course yards events, but something's missing. Very close to collecting a win in the 400 IM at NCAA D3 championships last year, placing third. Brian Fitzgerald, of course, taking back-to-back titles in that event, going 348. Crow going 352. But I'm sure that he got in the lab this summer and said, this year is my year. Let's talk about some of the times that Crow's posted this year. 935 in the 1,000, 151 in the 2 fly, 435 in the 500, 139 in the 2 free, 141 in the 2 IM, 45 in the 100 free. And As my coach Jeff Cooper once said, who, as many of you know, is the coach of Peter Vanderkay, many other elite swimmers, has coached several swimmers to sub 350 400 IM swims, says, if you want to be a great 400 IMer, dominate the 500 free and the 200s of stroke. And that is exactly what Crow Thorson is going out there and doing this season. My hot take is he rolls into NCAA championships this year, wins the 400 IM, and not only does he win it, he smashes the competition and breaks the 350 barrier. Anybody want to weigh in on this one?
I mean, he currently sitting at a 352, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah,
that's what he's
correct,
sitting at right now. I mean, it doesn't seem like a large drop on paper, but 350 is just some otherworldly swimming right there. I mean,
the 4am is one of those events where as you get faster and faster, it gets harder and harder to scrape off those numbers. I mean, you got to split a little bit here, a little bit there. It's just, you can't just go faster because then it's a give and take. The 4am is like, it's such a complicated event to swim well, and I mean, dropping time at that level, it's tough, but it can be done, and I really think at this trajectory, I mean, he's on pace to throw down something crazy at the end of the year.
Well, let me just remind you all what happened last year at the UAA Championships. Before he rolled in to the Division III Championship and placed top 8 in both the 400 IM and 500 free, he got second in the 400 IM with a 355 and third in the 500 free with a 426. Now, we know because he added a little bit of time in the 500 free, he was clearly coming into UAAs on some sort of taper. That was his best time. However, at that same UAA championship, he won a 150.3 in the 200 fly. A couple weeks ago, against Georgia Tech, this week against Birmingham Southern, he threw down a 151.6 in the 200 fly, almost approaching his best time, unsuited in October. So if we're already seeing this result from him in the 200s of stroke, I think right there is a spot where he could chop off a couple seconds in the 400 IM at the end of the year.
I mean, I would love to see this 350 mark get broken, but
Hey, we've got some anchor leg haters. I'm throwing my weight behind this opinion right here. He's doing it. He's going under 350.
I'm on Griffin's side here as well. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be tough though.
Let me hear your hot take, Josh.
My hot take. All right, guys, this is going to be really hot. All right, NYU is going to get third on the men's side of UAA championships on the back of their newest recruit, Derek Moss.
I mean, Derek Moss has been the buzz of Division III this offseason. Swimming World recently just ranked him as the best swimmer in the world that does not swim Division I. Obviously, there's a little bit of an asterisk there, as he's a multiple-time SEC champion in Alabama. This is a guy that is an All-American, first team in Division I, owns one of the fastest times in history in the 100 breast, making the jump to Division III. His doubters will tell you, he's got med school, he doesn't have time to swim. This guy's just, coming up here to chump on some, guys in Division III that don't know what they're doing. The UAA is one of the most competitive conferences in the country, and Josh, I'd love to hear you articulate how NYU is going to pull this off, especially coming off of, some serious losses last year, some great graduate students and seniors.
And right before you do that, I just want to say, I do not doubt Derek Moss's ability to perform well. I just think that this is not going to happen because there's only so much one person can do. Right, so how do you think Derek Moss is going to be able to articulate this to help NYU place above WashU and UA?
I got one word for you, man. Relays.
Oh, Lord.
Relays. To have somebody going that fast, that much faster than your competition in the relays is a big help. I mean, that's where the points come. And I think this guy, we can say he's a lock to win 3 events. I mean, if he's taking this seriously and he wants to win, he will. I mean, let's be honest. And I think the help he's going to provide on relays just puts NYU in such a good position with their roster to make it work where they can really contend for a 3rd place finish.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Derek Moss owns one of the fastest 50 breaststroke splits in history across the entire sport. I believe it's a top 5 fastest split that he did last year at NCAA championships, going 22.3. Leon Marchand is the fastest swimmer ever in the short course yards 2 breast at 22.2. I mean, he's going to come in here, and there's going to be smoke coming off the pool at Chicago when he goes at 22.3 on that relay. I mean, I don't know what teams can compete with that. Obviously, WashU, they've got some great swimmers, but on the back of Derek Moss, he could really move up those NYU relays. We know that the relays count for double the points at invitationals, and I think this is a guy that's really going to make a huge impact. Will they get 3rd? I don't know, but let's sit on that for next week and have the listeners think about what Josh just said.
No doubt we'll be closer.
They will, for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, I mean, I might have alluded to it a little bit before when we were talking about the absolute nonsense she was throwing down at there, Dual Meet. Hear me out. I'm saying it right now. I hope, Peter, in a couple months you can clip this and I can give a prediction as well. Savannah Zoo is going to win an event at D3 NCAAs this year. I mean, last year, at prelims, she was 4th in the 2-back. She ended up getting 6th. It got a little faster as it going into the night, but come on. The way that she's out this year, she's going to win an event.
Yeah,
please,
putting
please argue for me.
she's currently a sophomore. I mean, last year as a freshman going in and being able to do so well, like, you got to keep in mind, like, I feel like when I was a freshman, like, the biggest thing holding me back at these conference end of season meets was really my inexperience. I mean, now that she's been there once, been there, done that, I mean, this is simply like she could really contend for this spot. I want to agree with you here, Jay. I want to see it happen.
Keep in mind, guys, that was the 2-back. She's already thrown down the fastest 200 IM in D3 this year. We could see her contend in multiple events at NCAAs this year. And
Yeah,
it is
I
not
mean-
out of the question that she could finish top 3 in multiple.
Absolutely, and I think what really drives this point home is last year at the Case Western Reserve University dual meet, she was 2:00.73 in the 2-back, which actually was faster than when she went at the NCAA Division III championship. Now, something must have happened there between October and March for her to slip back a little bit, but if she continues this momentum that she's had earlier in the season, already posting a 2:04, hits the taper just a little bit better this year, I don't see any reason why she can't crack that 2-minute barrier. and contend for a title.
But counterpoint here.
Quick editor note, my counterpoint was way too hot for the podcast and therefore was rejected. Now back to the podcast in 3, 2, 1.
Hot takeover. She's winning, bro. She's winning. Peter, let me drop your hot take.
All right.
Now back to Peter's hot take.
This one doesn't really pertain mostly to me, but I wish to be up there in the contending spot. But I'm gonna say, last year NCAA Division III, 15-16 won the men's 16-50 freestyle. I'm saying someone's gonna put their pants on and break 15-10.
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
It's gonna be this guy.
It's a bold prediction, Peter. But listen, we've got the capital to do it here in Division III. We've seen Lucas Lang, who was the runner-up last year in this event, already posted 9:34 for CMS early this year in the 1,000. Amazing time. Kellen Roddy's back for another year of Johns Hopkins, who's just been honestly just a dominant force in the distance events the past couple of years. He is the guy that put up the 15-15-86 that won last year. And I couldn't agree with you more. As this event just continues to get faster and faster, somebody's going to have to put their head down this year and say, I'm the one that's going to work hard and I'm the one that's going to crack 15-10 this year. Obviously, we're hoping it's not here. We're very optimistic, but, just with the multitude of talent there, you'd think they have to push each other to go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I can tell you right now when I'm swimming and there's someone next to me, I mean it's so easy to just keeping that pace going faster and faster. I mean, with so many people contending for that spot, someone's bound to push someone else into that, breaking that 15-10 right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to get something very reminiscent of the men's 800 and men's mile at Worlds this past summer. This time in the D3 pool, we're gonna get one
Great
or two
connection there,
Yeah,
Josh.
we're gonna get 2 or 3 guys really going at it this year, and I think I'm buying that take, Peter. I mean, I just can't see how somebody doesn't break 15.
All right, well then let's change it. 15:05.
right,
You think
well,
that
that's-
can happen?
Now that might be a little too hot. My touchdown got a 3rd degree.
We talk about swimflation, Peter, but I don't know about all that. 15-10, I'm buying though.
I'm selling
right,
at 15:05. I'm buying 15:10.
All right, now there's the line that's being drawn. We got to get an idea here.
Well, let's move on from our hot takes to a more data-driven part of the podcast. For week 2, we're going to give you the updates to the top times, and we're including the women's times this week. So on the men's side, we saw new top times posted in 5 events, 4 of which were by new swimmers. So in the 50 free, we saw Casey Jacobs of Pomona take the top spot with a 20.77, improving upon Forrest Peterson's time from Calvin last week. We saw Marco Kurtnich of Kenyon, who had some great swims at the Kenyon Relay Meet this past week, post a 45.71 at their dual meet against Cincy, taking over Crow Thorson's time of 45.9 in the 100 free as the top time this year. Lucas Lang of Claremont Mud Scripps posted a 9.34 in the 1,000, taking over the top time of the week. Frank Applebaum must have heard me on the podcast last week say that McKee Thorson was going to challenge him in the 200 fly and one-upped him by almost 3 seconds, posting a 147 to easily take the top time in the country, becoming the first man under 150. And finally, a shout-out to Jake Meyer of Emory, who went 201.95 in the 200 breast, improving upon his nation-leading time of 202. Moving on to the women's side, we did not discuss the top times last week. Obviously, we're trying to work in much more women's swimming content into this segment.
We heard your feedback.
Absolutely. Our editor Peter's going to superimpose this over your screen right now. Let's just go ahead and discuss some of the top performers this year. I mean, obviously, this board is just dominated by Emory swimmers.
Yeah.
Megan Youngers, I mean, coming back with a force. We saw how well she did in the backstrokes last year, continuing her early season momentum. Jada Chatour of Emory, you know, some very eagle-eyed Division III swimming fans may recall her brother, Graham Chatour, who swam on NYU, as being an absolute force in the distance events. Clearly, his sister's continuing that legacy not only in the UAA, but on the D3 landscape as a whole, owning both the top 1,000 and 1650. Furthermore, we've already discussed some other very impressive swims. Gabby Wee of Kenyon, 218 in the 2 breast, doing well to challenge. You know, a great Division I breaststroker, and Savannah Shue of Carnegie Mellon in the 200 IM, putting up a great swim in the 200 IM. I mean, also, let's look at some of these times. There's some smaller schools really getting represented on this board. I know Swarthmore, always a force to be reckoned with at the D3 level, but we don't think of them as, you know, a team that's going to send somebody to NCAAs and win an event. But Janine Collins, firing on all cylinders this early in the season in the sprint events. We talked about 23 seconds being that magical mark for elite women's sprinting. 23.86, I mean, holy cow. That is setting the pool on fire this early in the season. Looking at some other times here, we've got Sachi Tanasaki Hudson of Chapman posting the top 100 IM, almost cracking a minute, which, I mean, that's a pretty elite time.
Oh, yeah.
The D3, I mean, you know, obviously the 100 IM, we think of it more as a fun event. When we're racing 100 IMs at the end of practice, you crack a minute and you're like, that was a pretty good IM workout today. To see her go 1:006 this early in the season, I mean, that's somebody who's got some elite speed. Maybe we can see her even move up to the 200 IM and post some great times this year. Excellent swimming this early on in the season. So, sort of to wrap up this episode of the podcast, we obviously are so thankful for the engagement and the feedback we received from episode 1. We did our best to implement as much as we could into this episode. We want to still hear from you guys. Our DMs will always be open on our socials. Peter posted them on here last week. He'll do the same this week. We want us to DM you. We want to hear what you think. Comment down below on the YouTube video. We also are super excited to announce that we are looking to upload the podcast to Spotify and Apple Music, as our listeners in the coming weeks will obviously be seeking that on-the-go digital format instead of having to sit down and crack open their YouTube browser. We apologize for the inconvenience in the meantime, but just know that we're taking this podcast to new heights.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of it was with that first episode. We thought to ourselves, let's put something out. Let's see if we have anything insightful to say for the swimming community. And we can't thank you guys enough. Yeah. So many people took the time to listen to it, but more importantly, give us feedback. They said, hey, we want to hear we want to see women's times, and we got you guys the women's times. They said, hey, we want to see some hot takes. The takes got a little too hot, as you'll see from the clipping that's going on. But listen. Keep listening. We appreciate all that you do, and please keep giving us feedback so we can deliver something that is exactly what you want to see out of the podcast.
Yeah, and don't just tell us what you want to see. Tell us what you don't like. If there's anything we did that maybe you thought, maybe don't talk too much about this, or I would have liked to hear a little more about this and less about that. Let us know. Like, the key thing we want to drive home here is we want to make this cater to the listeners as much as possible. So we really appreciate all the feedback, good or bad.
Absolutely, and you know what, I think unless anybody has anything else to add, this will wrap up episode 2, week 2 of the Anchor Leg Podcast, coming at you with deep dives into Division III swimming. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.